In this episode, Tom Fox and Megan Dougherty take up Picard, Season 2, Episode 9.
And as promised, here's Megan Dougherty. Megan, welcome back.
Hello. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
So, Megan, I had a little more than a little trouble with this episode. I didn't feel like it was the strongest episode, and it was the penultimate episode because, and we know it's Star Trek, so we're going to have a Big Bang 10 or finale, whatever it is. We don't quite know yet. But for me, there were a few poignant moments in here. And the one I would like to start with involved Jurati and the Borg Queen. And I want to start with her, the melding of Jurati and the Borg Queen. And that's been obviously one of our key themes throughout this. And then the Borg Queen and Seven, and we'll take up in a minute. But I just thought, the more I thought about it, the more I thought what a perfect person to become the Borg Queen is Jurati. And really throughout the series, because she didn't exactly best the Borg Queen, but she did fight her to a draw.
Yeah,
and
she was able to compete.
Yes, and she used it during she used mental acuity in a way that we typically haven't seen used against the Borg Queen. She was able to defeat her several times, and the Borg Queen tried to take over either the ship or engage in some activity. But I just thought it was delicious that Jurati became the Borg Queen. And for those listening to this podcast, the smile Megan has is from screen to screen. So I'm going to guess you like that part too, a little bit.
Loved it. I thought the idea of Agnes being able to, first kind of go toe to toe with the Borg Queen. She was in a weakened state, but she was, so smart and so aware of what was going on and the chemicals that were in play, and kind of understanding that from where the cards she had, she couldn't stop the Borg Queen, but she could negotiate the Borg Queen down into building a better Borg, and I want that on a T-shirt. I think if the merch people are out there listening, please give us Build a Better Borg t-shirts. But the idea of wouldn't that be great? But the idea of changing the Borg from something that consumes and assimilates to create more of a collective in the socialist communist sense, helping people, having people choose to become Borg. I thought it was a great way to play it.
So that brings us to an equally poignant scene, much shorter, but given I know your just love of Seven of Nine and what we've seen from her in a way we've never seen before because we never saw her as fully human before, the Borg Queen, to save her life, gives her Borg nanoprobes, and this puts the Borg part of her that never left in Voyager back in, and she gets her apparatus back. She's the Seven of Nine we saw in Voyager, but she's not a human Seven of Nine. And I know Seven of Nine is really poignant to you. What did you see in that scene, or I guess maybe how did you feel?
Well, I mean, it wasn't shocking. I figured by the end of this season, Seven would be back to having a Borg component. I think that's pretty integral to the character. And I mean, any Seven of Nine is better than no Seven of Nine, in my opinion. So I'm certainly glad that they didn't let her die in this episode, which I thought was a real possibility for reasons I'll explain more in our next episode review. But I love how Jurati saved her. Jurati is on the scale of things a little newer to friendship, but she was able to save Seven's life, and Seven was able to go back to, if not her preferred form of being in her body, at least one that was still around. So I liked it.
So I actually felt incredibly sad. Mm-hmm. And I felt sad for a reason that I would, of course, harken back to the original series. And there's an episode where James Kirk goes to a planet and through a series of only Kirkian activities, loses his memory, falls in love with an Indian princess, marries her, has a child. And, of of course, he has to come back and lead the Enterprise, so that all goes away. And he says, for the first time in my life, I was happy. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was 7 of 9 as a human, or Anna. She was happy. And so I felt a real sadness when she lost that moment, because she did experience through 8.5 episodes of humanity. And we talked about the power. I think it was in the first episode where she stood in front of the mirror and just touched her face. And that was, to me, an incredibly poignant scene with no dialogue and simply 7 of 9 looking in a mirror, proving that Jerry Ryan's a hell of an actress. When you can communicate that emotion without speaking. But I just felt real sadness because she had, and it wasn't that she was going back to something she remembered, because she had no memory of being a human. Kirk had no memory of being happy. Certainly while he was captain of the Enterprise, maybe he was happy in the Academy or some other realm. But I just felt great sadness. Perhaps more cynical than you, I knew 7 of 9 couldn't die. Even if I was a little worried what would happen to her, I knew they couldn't take her away from us. And, you know, spoiler alert, give us a 7 of 9 series. I'll even, you know, yes, please. But maybe we're headed down that route. But I just felt, she felt sad, and I felt real sadness at that scene. But you're right, she had to be saved, and it made logical sense within the story, certainly within her persona. And where the series will end, we're not going to give too much of a spoiler alert, but I was sad to see her lose that part that she had never experienced before, that she did for a short time.
Yeah, I think it kind of brings up, I mean, if it hadn't been for Q, she never would have had that experience at all. So the time that she got to experience as, you know, fully human Annika, that was a temporary gift, you know, and I hope she found pleasure and enjoyable. And I think she did make one comment about how she felt about it. I think it was in the next episode she did, though. But I think that she has spent her whole life building her personality and adjusting to and adapting to the fact that this has happened to her and this is her state of being. And I think part of it would be a shame for all of that work that she has done to go completely to waste.
So in this one, I think was when we saw the introduction of the Borg drones.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because Jurati made them at the end of episode 8 and now has an army of, like, bruiser bouncer Borg guys.
And I guess I was a little befuddled because you're absolutely right. They were bruiser bouncer guys, and they were bad guys, and they were going to do bad things. But they made them Borg drones. And I didn't think that was necessary, because I thought, and the reason they were created was that so Soong could use them to try to either kill or forestall the crew from getting back to La Serena, which they eventually lost it anyway, and then to stop them from getting Renee off to the Europa mission. Was there anything there to Soong being so tied to the Borg Queen that we missed or something? It just seemed to me to be out of sort of left field that he did it, but he did do it, and it was this, you know, significant plot scene in this episode. Was there something that you saw between Soong and the Borg Queen that was anything more than the appearances we saw on the screen?
I think what the Borg Queen saw in Soong was someone who would be quite useful. You know, he had great wealth, he had great access, he had great information. And is there any type of person more easily led in the direction you want them to than one who desires nothing but glory? Like, it was so easy for her to get him playing into her hands. So I think he was a useful tool, and he thought he was calling the shots, but very, very much was not so.
I would go so far to even say a useful idiot.
Possibly useful mad scientist.
Useful mad scientist. So I will say we're greatly looking forward to episode 10, and this is probably a good place for us to say sayonara. So I am Tom Fox.
And I'm Megan Dougherty. See you next time.
This is Tom Fox again. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Because That's What Heroes Do. Please subscribe or rate and review to our podcast. I hope you'll join us for our next episode where we conclude our look at Picard Season 2 by looking at the ultimate and final episode, Episode 10.